I want to say a little bit about this Corvid-19 infection that is running through the country, running through the world. We can call it the Chinese Wuhan virus, since that's where it started, and a great deal of their irresponsibility is why it's in a pandemic stage. Okay, so we're talking about getting information about people dying in Italy. They had like 600 people die in one day. Um, Here's the thing. Let's talk about Italy specifically. Italy has the second oldest population in the world. It's got two problems here. It's got the second oldest population in the world. Two, we're talking northern Italy, and what northern Italy has a problem with is illegal immigration, both illegal migrant worker immigration and illegal immigration coming out of China. Okay, and basically they go in there by sea. Okay, so they would leave China, they would stop in probably Iran. Oh, guess who else is having a pandemic problem? And then they would come up the Red Sea through the Suez Canal, and they would port in the Mediterranean in Italy. So now, if I put one person in a population, let's say I got 25 illegals here. I put one person in there that has the flu strain. By the time they make that trip, they all probably have it. And then when they come in, it's the inoculation rate. So that being said, now they're saying, well, why, particularly looking at the United States, um, um, looking at other parts of the world, looking at Italy and things like that. And one of the reasons that their death rate is so high is because, well, one is because the biggest reason is because their age population, their average age of their population. Italy is the second oldest country in the world. Japan is the oldest country in the world. So they have a much higher. They have like 32% or 28% of their people are over 65. So they have a much older population, and therefore have a much more susceptible population than, say, the United States. But they're talking about the healthcare system, and actually the healthcare system is being overrun. Now, Italy does not exactly have a top-notch healthcare system like the United States has. Um, I think it's socialized, but I'm not positive. Um, so what happens is we have so many healthcare resources, and when we have these healthcare resources, we get up to a point in a pandemic situation where we start having to make a choice. We have to start triaging patients according to what we believe our ability is to help them survive, and help them survive in what kind of condition. So typically that would be age related, since you are more susceptible to the virus and into severe complications of the virus when you're older. Um, that would be part of the calculation, especially when you're dealing with somebody who needs to be on a respirator, which is an item that is in limited supply. Uh, Limited supply between the respirators, the ICU beds, and even regular hospital beds. There's a limited supply. So I have to start making a choice. It's a choice nobody wants to make. Granted, you're saying that's terrible that you have to do that, but unfortunately, hard choices are necessary in the world we live in. So they could come up and say that, well, you have pre-existing condition, you have, you're aged, you're not healthy. We could put you on a ventilator. We maybe will extend your life a little bit, but probably not. You're probably not going to survive. And at that point, they remove treatment. Completely understandable in a triage in a pandemic epidemic situation. Um, Now people say, well, why doesn't the United States have enough ventilators for this emergency, enough hospital beds, enough ICU beds for this emergency? Here's the facts of the matter. This is a rare, rare occurrence. Okay, and if we built hospital beds, ICU beds, ventilators for a situation like this with advanced anticipation of a situation like this, then we have to build them at great expense. The ventilators that we just have sitting back in storage, you can't just roll these into the closet like a vacuum cleaner and, expect them to work when you pull them out. They have to be maintained at great expense. And then the personnel wise, it doesn't do any good to have a ventilator and a hospital bed if I don't have the personnel to man it, the doctors and the nurses and such. Okay, now I have to train all kinds more into a job market where that kind of demand isn't usually necessary. So we're outfitted for what we normally need plus a little bit, not what we would need in a pandemic. You can't anticipate this. You really can't prepare for this. You know, um, you can say, well, you should have seen this coming. All right, so that's the way it is. People in the United States, even at a certain point, and probably in specific areas of the United States first, you're going to start seeing them curtailing treatment on people because they're triaging. Um, Unfortunately, that's the way it is. I don't want to see it any more than you do, but I think that's what's going to happen, especially in Washington State and New York. Um, Now, let's go to the political end because this is being politicized, unfortunately, highly politicized. I heard the other day, I heard Chuck Schumer criticized President Trump and saying that, about shutting people off coming from China and Europe and all that, and saying, well, why didn't you do it sooner? But I remember when Trump was doing it sooner, and they were calling him a xenophobic racist. Schumer, get your story straight. Either it was necessary or it's not necessary. Now, here's another thing. You want to criticize the president because of our lack of preparedness for a pandemic of this sort, even though under every president throughout history, we have never been ready for this kind of thing. Um, we had the swine flu out in 2000 and I think it was 2009 through late 2010. Um, we had 12,000 Americans died. Hospitals were kind of filled up, and but the Democrats were in power, and they didn't do anything about it. They didn't say, "Well, let's get ready for the next time." They didn't use that H1N1 as an incentive to be prepared for a bigger one. So I mean, and you can't go by what I said before about the practicality of having these facilities. Right? You can't. You simply can't. I mean, it's not that I'm criticizing the Democrats for not preparing the country for this. Okay, I'm saying that you can't. I'm criticizing them for criticizing the president, who's only been president for 3 years, for not being ready for this. And then they turn around, and I'm reading articles that just absolutely anger me. I'm reading articles that are saying that Trump is giving hope he can't support and all that. Well, maybe he is. Maybe he is. I don't know. Okay, I know he's talking to some of the best experts in the country. Maybe he's giving us hope that he can't really substantiate. Well, guess what? Hope is what we need. You know, um, Keeping our mood up and keeping us hopeful is an important thing. You know. Now, we talk about all these other politicians, and I'm going to include both Democrats and Republicans in this. We are talking about um, what they do in their leadership role. Well, the fact of the matter is that these other Democrats and Republicans, okay, I automatically said Democrats, I'm talking derogatory. These other politicians have never been a manager themselves. They've never been a chief executive. So, since everything that's going on is something that's handled at the executive level, guess what? Legislature is not handled at your level. It's handled at the executive level. The ball is clearly in the president's court. Okay, and really, you don't have a whole lot to say about it. But I thank God that somebody with extensive executive um, experience is in control right now. And I look at a man on the television who's given his daily reports, and I see somebody with confidence. Okay, I see somebody that says we're going to beat this thing, and he's right. We are going to beat it. It's going to beat up on us, but we are going to beat it. So that's pretty what I got to say about that. It's not a political thing. Leave the politics out of it. You stupid people. Leave the. I heard him. Shut down on a reporter the other day. Is starting asking these stupid questions. You know, and it's like, will you leave the politics out of it? Just let the man do his job. You know. And another thing is, we're talking about all these Democrats, talking about Schumer, Pelosi, or yeah, Chuck Schumer, Pelosi, Biden. We're not seeing anything come out of their camp and like, well, this is what we should do. Biden comes up and says we should do this, we should and start this act, and we start this act. But the thing of it is, before he says it, the president's already done it. There's one that said about the Emergency Production Act or something like that. He said we should enact it, but he did. He said that on the very same day that Trump enacted it. So I mean, he's just not on the game. And you understand that this crisis is going to fall off in the summertime. It's going to fall away a bit in the summertime, but it's going to come back. There's going to be a wave too. Okay, next fall. And the thing of it is, you look at Joe Biden, who is the apparent front runner for the Democrats. Bernie Sanders is even a worse example of somebody you would want to control. But you look at Joe Biden, and I'm going to tell you what, you got to see that Joe Biden's his executive function is slipping. I mean, they try to cover it up, but it's slipping, and you can tell. So I don't think I really want him in control of the country during a time of crisis, especially. You know. Now it's possible that he would be in there and he would be just the puppet for Pelosi and Schumer and all these, and basically we are being run in a parliamentary system with an acting head, which is not something that's good for us. They don't get things done, especially in situations like this when things need to be done quickly. We need an executive power, okay? Unlike England, we need an executive power that takes care of emergency situations like this. And that's what the President of the United States does. That's what he's scheduled to do. And that's what he's been doing. And he's been doing a very good job of it. So, there it is. That's my opinion. All right. Bye.